Jesus showed me what he sees when he looks at humanity. It wasn't a miracle, it was a rupture. The light I thought was glory turned out to be a harsh truth about history, privilege, and the pride we pretend we don't carry. And if you stay until the end, he'll tell you exactly what he showed me, the part that left me unable to speak. I didn't plan for anything unusual that night. I wasn't searching for answers or praying for a sign. I was just tired in the quiet, ordinary way. A long day can wear a man down. The house was still, the kind of stillness that makes you hear your own breathing. I wasn't thinking about heaven, faith, or anything spiritual. My mind was on people, on how loud we argue, on how deep we divide, on how convinced we are that we're right. It was late, a little past midnight. I sat alone at my kitchen table with the lights off, letting the dark calm me in a way the world no longer could. The refrigerator hummed in the background. A street lamp outside spilled a thin strip of pale light across the floor. It was nothing special, just another moment in a long life full of quiet nights. But something felt heavy, not dangerous, not supernatural, just heavy, like the air was thicker than it should be. I rubbed my eyes, thinking it was the kind of exhaustion that comes from carrying too many thoughts for too many years. Thoughts about privilege, history, the things we inherit without realizing it. Thoughts about how people judge each other without ever understanding the wounds built over generations. I stood up to pour a glass of water. That's when it started. A small thing. A detail so simple I almost missed it. The room didn't get brighter. The shadows didn't move. The temperature didn't change. But the silence did. It wasn't the normal silence of an empty room. It was deeper, wider, as if the house had stopped breathing. I froze, not out of fear, but out of recognition. Something was entering the moment, something I couldn't name. It felt like the world around me had stepped back, creating a space I didn't ask for, but somehow understood was meant for me. I tried to shake it off. I took a sip of water, expecting the feeling to pass, but the silence stayed, the kind that makes every sound in your body loud. Your heartbeat, your breath, the click of your throat when you swallow. I set the glass down, and the sound echoed longer than it should have. Then the room shifted, not physically, not visually, but in weight, like reality had tilted by a degree or two. I felt a pull, not strong enough to scare me, but impossible to ignore. A pull inward, toward a place inside myself I didn't usually visit. A place where truth doesn't hide behind excuses. My vision sharpened. Every detail in the room became clear, almost too clear. The grain in the wooden table, the tiny scratch on the glass, the dust floating in the air. It was as if the world was preparing itself, lining everything up so nothing would distract me from what was coming next. And somewhere in that silence, without warning, I felt it, a presence. Not standing in front of me, not behind me, not around me, but within the moment itself. A presence that made the ordinary night feel like the doorway to something I wasn't ready for, but couldn't step away from. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I just stood there, breathing in a room that suddenly felt too full and too empty at the same time. That was the moment I knew something or someone was about to show me a truth I never asked to see. I didn't call out to anyone. I didn't ask for a sign. But the presence in that room grew heavier, like the air itself was waiting for me to notice something right in front of me. I turned slowly, not because I was scared, but because my body moved on its own, like it already knew who was there before my mind did. And then I saw him, not the way paintings show him. Not glowing, not floating, not wrapped in anything that looked holy. He stood there quietly, as if he had always been part of the room, and I was only now catching up. The light didn't shine on him. He didn't distort the shadows. He didn't speak, but his presence pressed into the moment like gravity. The first thing I noticed was his eyes. They weren't dramatic or burning or overwhelming. They were steady, clear, watching me the way someone watches a person who's about to hear something they've avoided their whole life. They carried a kind of sadness, but not the soft kind. This was a sadness that knew history, a sadness that had seen every generation argue, destroy, rebuild, and fight again, a sadness that had watched people repeat the same mistakes with new excuses. I froze. My breath changed. Not from fear, from recognition. Those eyes looked at me like they already understood everything I'd ever been proud of and everything I'd ever been blind to. It felt like standing in front of a mirror that reflected not the face you show the world, but the one you avoid. He didn't move. He didn't come closer. He didn't need to. His presence reached me without taking a step. It felt like he was letting me decide whether I wanted to face what he had come to show. When he finally spoke, it wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic. It was simple the way truth is simple when it's stripped of excuses. You want to know why humanity keeps breaking. Just that. No introduction, no comfort, no soft lead-in. His voice didn't echo through the room. It echoed through me. It hit in a place I didn't know had been waiting. A place I had kept quiet for years. Something inside me tightened, the way a person tightens before a blow they know is coming. He kept watching me, not judging, not angry, just present, painfully present. Look at what you've built, he said, and look at what you've ignored. I didn't answer. I don't think I could have. My throat felt dry, like every word I wanted to use to defend myself had already been taken away. He wasn't talking about my career. He wasn't talking about fame or film sets or success. His words were aimed at something deeper, something older, something tied to the world we inherited and the world we keep repeating. He lifted his eyes slightly, as if seeing beyond the walls. People carry history like a second skin, he said. They don't see how heavy it is. They don't see how it shapes what they think is normal. His words weren't loud, but they hit with the weight of centuries. I felt exposed, not physically, morally, ethically, historically. Then he looked straight into me again. You have privilege you don't notice, pain you don't acknowledge, stories you don't question. My chest tightened, not from fear, from truth, a truth I didn't know was waiting in the dark. And before I could speak, he said one more sentence, the one that told me everything was about to change. Let me show you what I see. He didn't touch me. He didn't raise his voice. He simply stood there, and the room changed again. Not visually, not with light or thunder. It changed in the way truth changes a man before the truth is even spoken. I felt something open, like a door I didn't know was locked. Watch, he said. One word. Quiet. Steady, final, and then the room fell away. I wasn't floating. I wasn't traveling. It felt more like someone had pulled a curtain back and showed me what had always been there. The first thing I saw wasn't a place. It was people, a sea of faces, not strangers, humanity itself. Billions of lives overlapping, pushing, colliding, people rushing, arguing, demanding, defending, no one listening, no one slowing down. It wasn't chaos, it was noise. Endless human noise. This, he said, is what fills the world. The scene shifted. I saw families, crowds, offices, streets, people living next to each other but not actually seeing each other, eyes moving fast, hearts locked tight. Everyone convinced they were the center. Everyone carrying a small, invisible shield made of pride. And I realized something simple. Everyone was protecting themselves from everyone else. I watched parents struggling under the weight of expectations, workers afraid to fall behind, children inheriting fears they didn't understand, people arguing not because they hated each other, but because they were terrified of being unseen, terrified of being wrong, terrified of being small. Jesus spoke again. Humanity doesn't break because of hate. It breaks because people believe their view is the only truth. The scene shifted again. Now I saw history, not dates, not wars, not leaders. I saw moments, small ones. A comment made in fear. A law written to benefit one group. A silence that allowed a wound to grow. These moments stacked on top of each other, forming a weight carried by people generations later who had no idea where it came from. History, he said, is not behind you, it is inside you. I felt my stomach tighten. I didn't know how much of my own thinking came from me and how much came from a past I never questioned. Then he showed me privilege, not wealth, not power, not status. Privilege that hid in smaller places the assumptions people make without noticing, the comfort they feel without thanking, the doors that open for some and close for others. Privilege is a kind of blindness, not cruelty. Privilege is the absence of awareness. People don't see their advantages, he said. They only see their struggles. The next vision hit me harder. I saw people carrying invisible weights, shame, fear, inherited pain. Some weights were small, some were crushing, but everyone carried something, even the proudest, even the loudest, especially the loudest. No one walks through life unmarked, he said, yet they judge others as if they do. I didn't speak. I couldn't. My chest felt tight, like the truth was too large to breathe around. Then everything went quiet. The noise faded. The visions disappeared. And I found myself back in the same room, the same night, staring at him again. He looked at me with the same calm, steady eyes. This, he said, is what I see when I look at humanity. Not sinners, not heroes, not enemies. Just people shaped by history, blinded by pride, and desperate to be seen. He paused. And humility is the only thing that can open their eyes. The room didn't shake. Nothing dramatic happened, but something inside me did. It felt like a crack running through the center of who I thought I was. I stood there facing him, but I wasn't really seeing him anymore. I was seeing myself, the version I never wanted to look at. The truth he showed me didn't fade. It stayed behind my eyes like a second image. Humanity breaking, history living inside people, pride shaping the world without anyone admitting it. It was all still there, replaying in my mind in sharp, painful pieces. And then he said a sentence that broke whatever strength I had left. You see the world through yourself first. It hit me harder than anything else that night, harder than the visions, harder than the truth about history, because it was personal. It wasn't about humanity anymore. It was about me. I felt my knees weaken, not from fear, from recognition, from the sting of being exposed in a way no one ever prepared me for. I had spent years thinking I understood people, thinking age gave clarity, thinking experience made me wiser. But standing there, I felt small, smaller than I had ever felt. Even as a young man trying to survive in Hollywood, I opened my mouth to speak, but no words came. My throat closed up, my chest tightened, and for the first time in a long time, I felt the weight of every mistake I had ever shrugged off. Moments I dismissed people too quickly. Times I assumed I was right. Years I moved through life with comfort I didn't question. Silences that protected me but hurt someone else. Memory after memory hit me like stones. I tried to breathe through it, but each breath felt thin. I leaned against the edge of the table just to stay upright. His eyes didn't judge me, but they didn't soften either. They stayed steady, waiting for me to see the part I didn't want to admit. You carry more than you think, he said, another crack inside me. I thought of my childhood, the things I inherited without choosing, the world I benefited from without asking why, the walls I walked through because they were already open for me. I saw the small ways I expected life to bend in my direction. I saw the pride I carried like an extra layer of skin. And then the hardest truth of all, you believe you're humble because you compare your pride to someone else's. I felt something collapse inside me. Not a dramatic collapse, a quiet one, the kind that leaves you standing but unstable. I lowered my head because I couldn't hold his gaze anymore. It wasn't shame from him. It was shame from myself. My eyes burned. I didn't want to cry. I didn't want to break. But the weight kept rising until something inside me finally tore open. A slow, painful tear, the kind you feel in your chest before you feel it in your eyes. I whispered, "I didn't know." He answered, "That is the beginning." Just 6 words. But they stripped away the last bit of pride I was still holding on to. I covered my face with my hands. My breath shook, and in that moment, I wasn't a man with experience. I wasn't someone who had lived nearly a century. I wasn't an icon or a storyteller or a survivor. I was just another human being facing the truth about myself for the first time. And that was the moment I broke. I stayed there in silence, trying to steady my breath. My hands were still shaking. The weight of everything he showed me sat heavy in my chest. I felt like the room was different now, not because it shifted, but because I had. And he seemed to know that. He gave me a moment, a real moment, the kind people never give each other anymore. Then he spoke. "Listen." The word was soft, but firm. It pulled me back to him. I lowered my hands slowly, feeling exposed, but strangely ready for whatever came next. "Humanity breaks," he said, "because people choose pride before truth." He didn't say it like an accusation. He said it like a fact, a simple, painful fact, something so obvious, I wondered why I never saw it clearly before. "People fight to protect their image," he continued, "but they don't fight for understanding." The sentence landed hard. I thought about all the times I pushed my point harder than I listened, all the times I spoke louder instead of softer, all the times I assumed someone else's life was easier because I didn't carry their history. He stepped closer, not physically, but in presence. The air shifted around his voice. "Humility is not thinking less of yourself," he said. "It is seeing yourself honestly." I felt that one, deep, too deep. He kept going. "When people lose humility, they lose clarity. They confuse comfort with righteousness. They confuse silence with peace. They confuse advantage with virtue." I swallowed hard. These were not lessons for a crowd. They were for me, for anyone who ever thought their experience was the center of the world. He lifted his eyes, as if looking far beyond the room. "Privilege is inherited," he said. "Humility is chosen." I didn't speak. I barely breathed, because he was right. People inherit circumstances without realizing it, a head start, a softer landing, a door left open, a burden left behind. They don't see these things because they never had to. But humility, he said, is when a person sees the weight others carry and chooses not to add more. Another silence, a heavy one. He wasn't condemning anyone. He wasn't praising anyone. He was naming a truth we all sense, but avoid because it demands something from us awareness. He continued with a steady tone. Humanity doesn't fail because people are evil. It fails because people are afraid to listen, afraid to admit they benefit, afraid to admit they hurt others without meaning to. I felt that fear inside myself. I knew exactly what he meant. "People want to be seen as good," he said. "But goodness is not an image. It is a choice, a daily one." My chest tightened again, but not with shame this time, with recognition. "And the first step," he said, "is humility." He let the word hang there. Humility. Not as a weakness, not as submission, but as clarity, as honesty, as the only way people can see each other as human again. Then he looked at me, and for the first time his voice softened. "You cannot fix the world," he said, "but you can open your eyes." I nodded, slowly. It was all I could do. "And once you see," he added, "you are responsible for how you walk." The lesson was Simple. Too simple. But it was the kind of simple that takes a lifetime to learn. I stood there for a long moment, letting his words settle inside me. They didn't fade. They didn't soften. They stayed sharp and clear, like a reminder carved into the air. And then the room shifted again, not through magic, not through light, through understanding, through the slow, heavy realization that nothing in my life could stay the same after this. The silence returned, but it wasn't the silence that frightened me earlier. This silence felt different, clearer, lighter, almost clean, like the world had taken a step back so I could finally see it without the fog of pride or old habits. I looked at him. He didn't glow or disappear. He didn't rise or vanish. He simply stood still, watching me with the same steady eyes, and for the first time. I felt like I understood what he wanted. Not obedience, not fear, not perfection, just honesty. Walk differently, he said. 2 words. Simple, direct. They carried more weight than any speech I had ever heard. I nodded slowly. I didn't know exactly what he meant, but I knew what it felt like. It felt like choosing to see people instead of assuming I already knew who they were. It felt like letting go of the need to be right. It felt like slowing down long enough to recognize the weight others carry, the kind I had ignored without meaning to. Then everything faded. Not suddenly, not dramatically. It was more like a quiet closing of a door. The presence in the room softened. The air returned to normal. The details of the table, the lamp, the window, all of it settled back into place. I was standing alone again. Same room, same night. But I wasn't the same. I breathed in. It felt different, lighter. The kind of breath you take after carrying a burden you didn't know was there. I walked to the window and looked outside. The street was empty. The world looked ordinary, painfully ordinary. But I could see something I had never seen before. People weren't just people anymore. Everyone was a collection of stories, histories, quiet fears, hidden weights, some inherited, some earned, some carried, unknowingly. It felt impossible to judge anyone the way I used to. It felt wrong to assume I understood a person just because I understood myself. I thought of small things first: the cashier who looked tired, the neighbor who never smiled, the stranger who cut people off in traffic. I used to react quickly. Now I wondered what they carried, what shaped them, what history lived inside them. Humility didn't feel like lowering myself. It felt like finally seeing others as equal in struggle, in confusion, in pain, in humanity. I stepped out onto the porch. The air was cool. A soft wind moved through the trees. For the first time, the night felt honest, simple, true. I closed my eyes and let the stillness settle inside me. I didn't gain wisdom. I didn't become enlightened. There was no burst of clarity. Just a quiet shift, a small turning inside the heart that changes the direction of everything that comes after. I walked back inside. My steps felt different, like they carried intention rather than habit. I didn't know what tomorrow would look like, but I knew how I would walk into it. Slower, softer, more aware, more honest, and maybe, for the first time, truly human. When everything was over, I stood alone in that quiet room for a long time. Nothing around me looked different, but I wasn't the same man who walked into that night. The truth he showed me stayed with me, not as fear, not as regret, as clarity, a clarity I didn't know I had been missing. I kept thinking about the way he looked at humanity, steady, honest, without judgment. He didn't see villains or heroes. He didn't see powerful people and forgotten people. He saw stories. He saw weight. He saw pain passed down like an inheritance. And he saw pride strong enough to blind almost everyone. I realized how often I moved through the world without noticing what others carried. How quickly I assumed, how easily I dismissed, how normal it felt to center everything around my own perspective. But the biggest realization was this. I had spent years trying to understand life through experience, success, age, and logic, and yet I had never asked the simplest question, what shaped the people standing in front of me? That question alone changed everything. And once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. Since that night, one truth has stayed with me more than anything else. People are hurting in ways you cannot see. Even the confident ones, even the quiet ones, even the ones who look like they have it all figured out. History doesn't disappear. It lives inside homes, families, neighborhoods, generations. It shapes tempers. It shapes fears. It shapes expectations. And most people never realize it. They think their reactions are just who they are. They think their assumptions are just common sense. They fight each other without understanding the weight they're both carrying. Humility is the only thing that cuts through that blindness. Not weakness, not defeat. Just humility, the willingness to see beyond yourself. Humility slows you down. It softens your voice. It makes space for someone else's reality. It turns judgment into curiosity. And once you have it, even a little, the world stops feeling like a battlefield. It becomes a hallway of closed doors, and humility is the only key that fits the lock. No one can fix everything. No one can erase history. No one can carry the world on their own. But anyone, absolutely anyone, can choose to walk with clearer eyes and a softer heart. And sometimes that's enough to change a room. Enough to change a conversation. Enough to change a life. I've lived long enough to know that people don't change because they are told to. They change because something opens inside them. Something small. Something honest. Something true. That night opened something in me I didn't know was closed. I don't share this to convince you of anything. I am not here to argue. I am not here to preach. I am not here to tell you what to believe. I am sharing this because the truth I saw was simple, and sometimes the simple things are the ones we ignore the longest. If you remember anything from this story, let it be this. Every person you meet is fighting a history you cannot see. Every person you meet is carrying a weight you have never felt. And every person you meet becomes easier to understand the moment you let humility walk in first. I don't know what you will do with that truth. I don't know where it will take you. But I know this much. If you want to see humanity the way he sees it, start by lowering your pride. That's where clarity begins.